consumers have been sold solar as install and forget. There was a report in Jaipur that last August, I think 1,000 rooftop solar systems flew away. Consumer awareness also means understanding sahi solar kya hai. Solar panels, the fundamental principle is they convert sunlight into electricity. But if I have a panel that's covered on dust and bird droppings, it won't get sunlight, it won't produce as much electricity.
Why did you start with commercial and why did you do the pivot to residential?
I always say there are 4 ducks that have to line up for residential solar adoption.
I believe you have some design innovation.
The first innovation that we did was we created our own solar pergolas, these ready to install kits. We call them wind pro mounts. ये तो करना ही चाहिए. इन्होंने भी किया, उन्होंने भी किया, इनका बिल भी zero, उनका बिल भी zero. The neighborhood syndrome starts to kick in.
What are you hopeful for in terms of climate?
Oh.
If you haven't already considered solar, you should as a consumer. Maybe it's actually not too late as an entrepreneur or career either. It's fast growing with great blue sky demand, great policy support for both demand and supply, and yet there is industry fragmentation. It demands execution skills and trust. Perfect challenge for smart entrepreneurs. Our guest today explains why and how her startup pivoted to residential rooftop solar during the COVID lockdown and managed to become one of the leading players. We discussed the sector basics before exploring what they did differently. I'm Hansi, and welcome to the Climate Conversations.
We at Rainmatter are learning about how climate change is affecting you and me. And more importantly, what we can do about it. Join us as we speak with people who are working on solutions for India. Welcome to the Climate Conversations.
The growth in solar capacity has been exponential. From 2000 to 2010, cumulative global capacity doubled every 2 years. Then from 2010 to 2023, the rate slowed to doubling every 3 years. And now a doubling every 3.8 years from this year to 2030 is consistent with the International Energy Agency Net Zero Emissions 2050 scenario. Solar now contributes to 5.5% of global electricity production, but it needs to go to 22% by 2030. Solar capacity boomed due to steep declines in costs, supportive policy environment, technology efficiency improvements, and increased manufacturing capability. So basically, the more we deployed, the cheaper it became. But actual generation didn't rise as much as capacity though, partly because some of the installations were in less sunny countries. India generated 22% of its electricity from clean sources. In 2000, wind and solar accounted for only 0.3% of India's power generation, but jumped to 9.9% in 2023. India has huge untapped potential. Our average sunlight is not far behind Chile, the leader in percentage share of electricity generation. Mediterranean countries like Greece, Spain, and Italy have lower average sunlight and yet higher shares. On the other hand, European countries like the Netherlands and Germany are not exactly known for their sunlight. Australia, leading in terms of per capita, is understandable. Having said all this, we are not doing too badly in absolute terms. We are only behind China and the US. The Indian government has set out ambitious renewable targets, which will see solar generation reach 602 terawatt hours. Achieving these targets would require an annual growth rate of 27%. According to India's national electricity plans for up to 32, India plans to reach 570 gigawatts of renewable capacity and to reach 44% renewables in total generation by 2031. Now, solar can be produced by utilities, commercial and industrial sector, and by residential. In this episode, we will focus on residential, which is basically rooftop solar. Within that also, it could be on-grid, off-grid, and hybrid. I sat down with Shreya Mishra, one of 3 co-founders of SolarSquare, to understand the opportunity for on-grid residential rooftop solar.
So in India, 26 crore households have electricity connection. Out of these 26 crore households, roughly 6 to 7 crore homes are independent homes with, a pakki chat, right? People who have a pakki chat to put up solar, people who are paying at least 2,000 rupees per month in electricity bills. So I would say middle income, lower middle income and above, right? So homes that could probably potentially install solar, that's about 6 to 7 crore homes. In India, over the last decade, we've had less than 1% homes actually adopt solar. So we have only about 6.5 lakh homes that have put up solar as per the Ministry of New and Renewable Energies data that have adopted solar under the ministry's subsidy scheme. So we can say that's broadly the size of penetration in India. That's less than 1%. So India, as a tropical country with more than 300 sunny days, it's one of the cheapest in the world to put up solar in India because the soft cost of solar. Installing solar has a lot of manpower cost, right? And we are a country that can generate so much employment, that has access to cheap labor, people looking for employment. So that naturally ends up causing the soft cost of solar to be very low. So a lot of sunshine, great power production, and the cost of solar is cheaper.
The question then is why we haven't adopted it already. I would have thought that the availability and cost of solar panels would explain most of it. But as Shreya pointed out, delays could also be due to the process, starting with glitches in the national portal, as well as meter connections with the discoms.
I always say there are 4 ducks that have to line up for residential solar adoption to explode. The first duck was policy. So India made net metering a legal right. India made subsidies available to consumers to aid the market a little bit. India is generally pro rooftop solar, right? Let's just say that. That's number one. The second thing is government permits. For just like a car, every car requires a car permit. Every home that goes solar requires a solar permit, right? So you require a meter which is tested by the distribution company because you are going to be exchanging power with the grid. So it has to be tested by the distribution company. You have to take a permit to be exchanging power with the grid. And there are several other things, right? So it could, in a state like Gujarat, take as little as 15 days. But in some other states, which still have a bunch of inefficiencies, it could take as high as 75 days as well, right? So with all of the will, the government permit simplification is a very, very important piece of the puzzle, and many countries have seen solar adoption not take off because of this one irritant. The third duck, after both of the first two have happened, is consumer awareness, right? Like any new product category, till it becomes neighborhood chatter, till everybody accepts that ये तो करना ही चाहिए, इन्होंने भी किया, उन्होंने भी किया, इनका बिल भी zero, उनका बिल भी zero, the neighborhood syndrome starts to kick in, right, for any new technology. The fourth very important duck, Hansi, is cost, the financing. Even though the economics of solar is great, I can save a lot of money, I understand it, I just don't have 2 lakh, 3 lakh today to shell out of my pocket. That's the thing with most climate efficient technologies like EVs or rooftop solar. The total cost of ownership over lifetime is low, but the upfront investment is high. That becomes a barrier to entry. So having easy access to financing, easy access to loans at low interest rates available, that is an important duck to line up for consumer adoption to go high. Also, solar has a unique challenge. It's not a finished good product like a car. It's made in a factory, goes from the factory to your home. Solar actually has 70-80 components. We procure them from the OEMs, and a SolarSquare or any installer would assemble it on your roof. So the power plant is sort of created on your roof, right? It's not a finished good that you're buying. So how well is it made? What is the quality? What is the workmanship? Is there after sales? Will this asset perform? So two companies with the same components can actually have very different performance of rooftop solar. One can make you 5,000 units of power a year, another can make you, let's say, only 4,000 because it was poorly made, not maintained, etc. As a lender, that's very difficult to underwrite, right? Because this consumer may say, "Mere solar se to bijli nahi bani, I am defaulting on my loan." Right? So how does a lender underwrite that? Number one. Number two, there's no repo market, right? Second-hand solar panels are not bought and sold in India, unlike, for example, cars. With Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, now India has actually mandated every nationalized bank, from SBI to Union Bank of India to Canara Bank to Punjab National Bank, every nationalized bank has been mandated to start a preferential residential solar loan program. That too at a 7% interest rate if you're buying 3 kilowatts or less. Now 7% is crucial because it's lower than your home loan, right? So they've really solved for the finance availability.
A traditional electricity generation process begins with the power plant's producing, and then moving through high voltage transmission lines, stepping down to substations, and then reaching us via local transformers and distribution lines. The whole transmission section is called the grid. The companies that distribute the last mile are called distribution companies or discoms. Net metering, in a nutshell, means that the residential consumer can net off the cost for power that they generate at night against the price that they supply during the day. So the grid acts like a giant battery without there being a price difference. We will address metering in a future episode as it becomes much more complicated when there are different sectors, different geographies, and different time of day tariffs involved. The policy support that she mentioned is not just on the demand side, that is the consumer side, but also on the supply or the manufacturing side. Solar panels are basically photovoltaic cells that use silicon semiconductors to convert solar light into electricity. The cells are linked into modules which are then assembled into arrays. While India has started producing solar panels, it does rely on China for the cells.
Do you think Indian manufacturers are scaled enough to be able to supply the volumes that we need right now with this subsidy?
That's a good question. So our current manufacturing capacities are, for example, in 2023, I think some less than 1.5 lakh homes went solar. In 2024, Government of India is aiming 25 lakh odd homes to go solar, then about 30 lakh homes in 2025, and then 45 lakhs in 2026. So 3 years, 1 crore, that's your math. Now we're talking 20x this year, right? So obviously the manufacturing capacities are always in line with the demand that you see. Also, by the way, one major macroeconomic factor is US and Europe have put sanctions on Chinese panel imports. So India, Malaysia, Vietnam, all of these countries have been massive exporters of solar panels to US and Europe. So a lot of Indian manufacturing capacity is actually also going towards exports. So I think there is going to be some rebalancing, new capacity is being added. There will be rebalancing of, supply to India. Of course, there's a price arbitrage. An Indian manufacturer can charge higher to export to US than he would get for selling domestically in India. So there's also that. I think the right answer is both. Like manufacturing should grow to support the demand of exports and also the demand of India. And I think the whole country is gearing up towards it. All the large manufacturers, small manufacturers, everybody is ramping up capacities as I understand right now.
Even if demand and supply line up, there is a service aspect. The panels need to be installed on a rooftop. And that is not as easy as it sounds. The process involves civil work as well as high voltage electrical work.
You are constructing this power plant for a 25-year life. So I think the workmanship matters a lot. Ensuring that you install it in shadow-free space, installing that you design it well, installing that you grout it well on the roof, that it doesn't lead to water leakage for the consumer, ensuring that all the electrical safety is really well done. What few people realize is that wind safety of solar is very, very critical. Why? Pre-monsoon winds happen. Of course, they happen everywhere in the world. They happen in India as well. But India, due to climate change, is seeing a lot more cyclones. So if I'm constructing this solar for a 25-year life, I actually also have to take into consideration how many cyclones does it have to face. Sure. Right now, India is looking at 1 to 2 cyclones a year, which used to be one cyclone a decade, is now 1 to 2 a year. We had cyclone Biparjoy, we had cyclone Amphan. So actually ensuring that they're designed for heavy wind safety is very, very crucial. You don't want them falling off your roof. These are made of glass. Each panel weighs 27 kgs. A typical family gets 6 to 10, 12 panels on their roof. So it's actually wind safety matters a lot. So that's also consumer education that we've been doing. So there's electrical safety, there's water leakage safety, there's wind safety, then there is ensuring that it's not put up in a shadow, because ultimately it works on sunlight. Then comes the after sales. So India is a very dusty country, Hansi, and solar panels, the fundamental principle is they convert sunlight into electricity. But if I have a panel that's covered on dust and bird droppings, it won't get sunlight, it won't produce as much electricity. So this is a power plant. Just like your AC and your car need maintenance, rooftop solar requires regular maintenance, right? For many years, consumers have been sold solar as install and forget. लगाओ और भूल जाओ. ये तो कुछ नहीं है. This has no moving parts. ये तो चलता रहेगा. Which is the biggest lie, right? So we've also worked towards creating that consumer awareness that सही solar क्या है, right?
As we can see, solar panel installations require excellent execution skills and also consumer trust because a product has a 25-year life. While the government has already facilitated the training of more than 56,000 people called Shreya Mishra, it also announced that it will ramp this up to 1 lakh individuals to train to install solar panels on residential homes.
Which now leads me to SolarSquare. I believe Neeraj and Nikhil set it up back in 2015, supplying to commercial sort of establishments, and then you made this pivot into residential. Talk us through why you did that. Why did you start with commercial and why did you do the pivot to residential?
Sure.
And what's different about what you're doing?
So I think a lot of serendipity letters here, Hansi. I think so Neeraj and Nikhil are almost 9 years into building SolarSquare. When everybody else, all our batchmates, including myself by the way, we were building these consumer tech businesses and raising venture funding, he went the hard way. He said, मैं solar मुझे लगाना है and I want to work towards in the energy transition space and I will do whatever it takes, right? So there was no funding. He bootstrapped. He put all his savings, all his dad's savings into building SolarSquare. And he started in 2015 with the commercial solar segment. So they were basically helping large corporates, Fortune 500 companies switch to solar. In 5 years, he scaled to like ranking as one of the top 5 rooftop solar EPCs in India. He scaled to about 100 crores in revenue, all bootstrapped, lot of tough times, tough years, COVID, all of the cash flow struggles of a bootstrapped entrepreneur. He suffered from all of that. But there's the strength that Neeraj and Nikhil built was actually in designing very high quality rooftop solar solutions. So their strength was engineering, their strength was great design, great after sales, and they came to be known in the industry as if you want the highest quality solar solution, SolarSquare is the company to go to, right? And so that is how they built a name for themselves in commercial solar space. At the same time when they were doing this, from 2015 to 20, they were doing B2B solar. I was building a consumer tech startup, very different from the world of solar. I was in a fashion tech startup, but it was into renting of fashion, right? So I always somewhere, had this thing about, okay, do something that's, for a greater good, that's something that has an impact. So, I was into this sustainable fashion, renting and all of that. Then that was a venture funded company. I had a lot of highs, great stuff, crash landed towards the end. And reality hit and I realized that, many mistakes made, but a lot of learnings. And I learned a thing or two about building a consumer business. So Neeraj in 2020 wanted to get into the residential solar space. So that's when he called me on and he said, hey, I know about solar, you know about building consumer businesses, you know about, a little bit about tech, venture funding, all of that. So let's get together, let's try our hands at residential solar. So in 2020, we forayed into residential solar as a side business. I joined and then COVID hit and, we didn't know and he and I were expecting our first child. We were locked down in my hometown, which is Bhopal, and so a lot of serendipity. And we said, "Chalo, yahin se let's start residential solar. Idhar sab jagah ghar hi ghar hai, individual homes hai. Let's do it." And we started from MP, and in 6 months we realized ki this is a behemoth of an opportunity. There's no professional company in the residential solar space, and it started to feel like the ducks were lining up, Hansi. That the ducks would line up and this industry would explode. Of course, we couldn't have imagined that India will set like a 1 crore target and the Prime Minister will, push this industry the way it is. Of course, we didn't know any of that, but it just felt intuitively that there will be a lot of tailwinds in residential solar and somebody has to solve for this consumer segment, right? After like 6-7 months. So in late 21 is when we pivoted. So left a 100 crore B2B solar business and said we start from zero on residential solar.
SolarSquare jumped right into the space when there were thousands of neighborhood providers acting as distributors of large OEMs or manufacturers. We discussed their unique selling propositions as well as future plans.
And in B2C, you have to now sort of design the solution on a small rooftop.
Yeah.
I believe you have some design innovation. So talk us through that. What exactly is that? What is WindPro?
WindPro, yeah. Cool. So Hansi, when we started out in residential solar, one of the things that was first non-negotiable for us was that we will do it if we can ensure quality and safety at scale, right? Because like I said, we're dealing with families, there's wind safety, electrical safety. We said we have to figure out a way that we don't do it like this hyper customized solution, because then I can't control quality. Sitting in Bombay, I don't know what is happening on this home in Lucknow. So the first innovation that we did was we created our own solar pergolas, these ready to install kits. We call them Wind Pro mounts. So they have two benefits. One, they are cyclone proof. So they are these 6 feet, 8 feet raised pergolas. We put up panels on top of that. The family can still enjoy the roof space. So you've put up solar, but it's like a shade. It's not on your roof. It's not on the floor, right? So it allows you to still use your roof for drying clothes or flying kites or exercising or morning chai or whatever. So we created these pergolas. Now you're creating a superstructure, an elevated structure on the roof. So it has even more wind pressure, right? It has to handle even more wind speeds, because the higher up you go, the more is the wind speed. So we designed these to be pre-engineered, prefabricated, ready to install, and to be cyclone proof. So they solved for two things. One, they were ready to install, pre-engineered, so there was no customization. We could be sure that, you know, a standard quality will get installed everywhere. They are simply to be nut bolted. So they are like IKEA. Each part fits into the other only one way. So they're completely foolproof, donkey proof. So anybody can be trained to go and assemble them on the roof. So that was one, ready to install, pre-engineered, no safety risk, no risk of any, like, you know, amateur mistakes happening on your roof. That's one. Second, we designed them to be cyclone proof. We designed them to handle 170 kilometers per hour of wind speed. We were seen as this crazy company in 2020-21. They were like, yaar, solar bech rahe ho, cyclone se kya lena dena hai, right? And many of our competitors actually called us, ki, you know, you guys are spoiling the market, and what is this cyclone proof and this and that. But we said we believe that that is what India needs.
But if you didn't do it, wouldn't there be a liability issue? If you install something, someone gets hurt, who has the liability, just out of curiosity?
Of course, the liability is on us, but there are thousands of rooftop solar that crash, Hansi, every year during pre-monsoon winds, right? At least a few thousand have crashed in 2023 alone. So I think, yes, the liability does lie, but oftentimes solar companies have gotten away saying it's a cyclone, it's a force majeure situation. And consumers, for buying cheap, they get convinced into buying these poor quality, you know, these module mounting structures or these installations.
But until now, only property has damaged. I mean, any lives?
Property has, cars have gotten damaged.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if of life episodes, at least not that I have heard of being reported. Right. But there was a report in Jaipur that last August, I think 1,000 rooftop solar systems flew away. Wow. 1,000. So this could be a menace, right? We're talking of 1 crore homes going solar. If nobody is talking and leading the charge on safety awareness, you could have a lot of consumers getting fooled into buying those poor quality, you know, poorly designed rooftop solar that could probably not even handle, forget cyclones, they could not even handle 130, 140 kilometers of a pre-monsoon winds, right? So wind safety awareness was this big thing that we did, and you know, we did lead the charge on that, and it hit home with consumers, right? When a family is going solar, when you educated them, they actually, you know, it made sense, and you know, that became a huge reason for why consumers opted for SolarSquare in the market. So that was one product innovation that we did.
And is that your IP, or are you sharing that with your competitors?
No, so this is designed for us, by us. These are not a patent, but they are trademarked by us as Wind Pro mounts, and they are, you know, they are something that you can only buy from SolarSquare in the market. However, we are considering selling it in the wider market as well. I think as a company, Hansi, I think one of the things and I think it's very...
Because you can't sell, you individually as a company can't take over 100% market share,
correct,
I assume.
Correct.
And if other people do need to do it to grow the market, I think it might be a good idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Hansi, climate change is one such thing, and energy transition is one such thing. I think literally Indian players, international players, like, I think we're all in this battle. That's much bigger than any of our you know, abilities, any of our independent aspirations. And so I think we do believe it a little bit in saying, okay, I heard this term called, as a company, can you be system positive? Which means that yes, you're building a business, and yes, it is a for-profit business, but can you have an overall greater impact on the industry? Can you raise the bar for the industry? I believe the consumer education that SolarSquare has done, I humbly accept that it has been system positive. It has led to greater consumer awareness. It has led to the competition also raising their quality standards, which is ultimately the idea, right? Because if poor quality solar keeps getting installed, if it gets damaged during winds, or it doesn't perform, if it's not maintained, the word in the market will be, "Arey, solar to chalta nahi hai." Right? So ultimately, better education leads to everybody selling better quality, and the consumer saying solar sahi hai, right? Like, okay, I've owned solar for 5 years, great, it works. I've saved on my bills every year, right? So I think net it's a system positive thing. I think one of the things I'd like to talk about is in the US, and I think it does depend on how different industries shape up, and I do, by the way, believe that the market leader carries a huge responsibility on setting the tone for the industry, right? In fact, in the US, solar was sold a lot without maintenance, and a lot of consumers have been left hanging. In the country where they're not getting after sales, they're not getting their warranty claims, and ultimately it leads to a bad name.
I was going to say that. So one is the actual mount. Talk us through the installation process design, as well as ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. So one, like I said, our Pergola's solar wind pro mounts are ready to install. So the whole thing is assembled on your roof. It takes about 6 hours. 9 a.m. our crews will show up in these delivery vans that we have customized. You see these beautiful vans from outside, but they're actually customized from within. Because I have to carry these panels made of glass safely from my warehouse to the customer's home. One of the big damages that happen is that in the local market, panels are actually carried in open trucks, they're tied in ropes, and a lot of micro cracks and damages happen just in transit, right? Wow. Which impact the performance of panels. Now, for a consumer, he doesn't know, right? He's completely unsuspecting. And these panels get installed, then they don't produce the rated power because they were damaged during transit and delivery. So one of the things we do is we deliver all the equipment very, very safely. Our crew, as well as everything that is to be installed, is inside this delivery van. It's customized with it took us about 9 months to customize these vans and do hit and trials. So one is safe delivery. That's one. The second part is these are ready to install. So in 6 hours, you can just put the whole thing together. How we also mount it on your roof, we actually ensure no water leakage risks in the future. So we actually mount it on your roof with chemical anchoring and ensure that there's no cracks on your roof that are left, or no water leakage risk that comes to you. In fact, we give a 1 lakh rupee water leakage coverage. That's the promise we have on our quality. That if something happens to your roof and if you face water leakage, we cover you with up to 1 lakh rupees. So that's on the workmanship and how the civil work happens. Then the whole thing, the electrical connections and earthing and meter and all of that is,
And there's an inverter and there's a
inverter, earthing,
and there's also this what do you call it? Micrometers? No, what are they called?
Micro inverters. Yeah. So those are different technologies of inverters only, Hansi.
So do you use a particular one?
We do both. We do both. We use string as well as micro inverters. I think both technologies have their pros and cons. One is a superior technology, more expensive. Second is a technology that's more affordable, and it works if the roof doesn't have shadow issues. So micro inverters are used in certain type of cases. Of course, they are a superior technology and better product. So all of that happens in 6 to 7 hours, right? So 9 a.m. our crew is in. By 3 to 4 p.m. they're actually done with everything, right? So ironically, all the government permits can take 30 to 40 days. The actual installation takes 6 hours, right? So we take care of, like I said, delivery, the civil work, water leakage, everything is ready to install. So there's no human error possible, right? When you buy a customized rooftop solar, somebody comes with pipes, they'll cut it, they'll weld it, they'll create this superstructure on your roof, and you're relying on labor, right, which is paid 400 rupees a day, which can make errors, right? A lot of respect for their work, but they are not the engineers of, they can't be the engineers of your rooftop solar. So that customization and welded solutions, they do have a lot of risks for the consumer. There's a lot of cost cutting that the local market does. You buy thinner members and all of that happens. So we take care of standardization by using the pre-engineered, prefabricated. So
you will not therefore do any custom stuff?
We don't do any of this custom stuff, and this is all pre-engineered, prefabricated on the consumer's roof. So that's the second part. Once this is done, we of course also take care of all the government permits, Hansi, around it, right? So before installation, there are certain permits. Post installation, the meter has to be installed by the government. So there's a person from the DISCOM who will come and install it. We coordinate that. We coordinate everything, even the subsidy application.
Right.
And we are there till the consumer gets a subsidy in his bank account as well. That's as far as the installation side of things is done. Every consumer who buys from SolarSquare gets a 5-year maintenance, right? Now the 5-year maintenance, Hansi, is itself a expert's job, right? Like I said, it's a high voltage system. India is a very dusty country. Dust setting on your panels can impact its production in just 6 months by 30-40%. So here we are talking of 5-year break even. Imagine if you don't maintain it, this break even could go to 8 years also, right? So all the economics of solar is actually only valid for a well-designed, well-maintained solar, right? So that's where the maintenance aspect comes in. Like I said, a lot of consumers used to buy solar saying, ये तो install and forget है, लगा लीजिए भूल जाइए,
पानी डाल
देना आप, etc., right? I think it's neither safe nor it's the right solution, right? Because you will send a chotu on your roof to clean the panels, वो पोछा मार देगा, साबुन लगा देगा, you will cause micro cracks. Right, this is hard dust, so you have to clean it with a specific brush. A trained technician has to use it, has to clean the panels the right way, and there are several aspects of it, right? But I think that consumer awareness is now coming. That boss, you're buying a high voltage power plant, and it is an expert's job to clean it, to ensure its power production. So we take care of that, where our consumers get once in a month AMC visit, where we go and do deep cleaning of the panels. We do a quarterly system health check, wherein every 3 months we'll check everything, the full technical maintenance, electrical, mechanical, all joints, voltages, etc. Every quarter. Once in 3 months, our technician will also do, along with cleaning, he'll do the full system health check as well. Plus, we do remote monitoring real time. So all of our homes that buy solar, they are connected to internet. So they will either have their own Wi-Fi or they'll have a SIM card that we install, and we have data of remote power production.
Ongoing basis, you're doing that?
Real time, every day. So we are actually tracking even that. In fact, what we have done now, after 3 years of doing quality maintenance, etc., we have so much data. We are now, Hansi, offering our consumers something called SolarSquare Good Zero, which is basically a 5 years guaranteed savings, which means for 5 years, I will ensure your power production. If I told you will get 5,000 units of power, but you only got 4,990, I will pay you for the balance 10, right? If you got only 4,000, I will pay you for the balance 1,000. So that is how we have converted the operations excellence into a brand promise now. And that gives a lot of peace of mind to consumers, right?
And that 5 years coincides with the break-even point. So basically, until you get your money back, you are underwriting it.
We are here, we are ensuring your savings, we are ensuring your generation. So that is something that we did, because we believe that was a large part for the consumer to take a leap of faith, right? Once families hear that, even the biggest of skeptics will now say, ki yaar, ab to matlab, now there is no reason, right? It's not like an FD of 25%.
Okay, that leads me to financial viability. I mean, all of these promises you can make only if you are a financially viable company.
Yeah.
So talk us through your financials.
Yeah.
How much funding have you raised? Where are you at? Will you be around in 5 years' time?
So we've been around for now 9 years, going into our 10th year. We were bootstrapped and profitable for the first 5 years. Then we got into residential solar and raised funding. So for the last 3 years, we've been a venture funded company, and so all of those dollars are funding a certain loss in the business.
I was going to say, and how much did you raise?
Yeah. So we've raised 120 crores, Hansi, across our seed and series A. We've used it to build our leadership team. We've used it to build a lot of tech. We've used it to make a lot of mistakes. Right? I think even things developing like this delivery van or these WindPro mounts, all of that, right, requires certain investment, resources, trial and error, etc. So we've used our funding in all of that. Most startups use their funding into marketing.
Right.
Interestingly, we've, out of 120 crores, I think a lot of, we are now, the number 1 residential solar brand in India. As per the National Solar Portal, we are number 1 ranked for the last 12 months.
Number 1 is by the number of units
Number
sold.
of installations that we've done, residential solar installations that we've done, because all applications go through the National Solar Portal. So it's a verifiable data. So now we are the number 1 on the National Solar Portal. We are 4 times, 5 times larger than the second company.
And you are in what, 15 cities?
We are in 15 cities of India.
I noticed you have like what 30% market share in almost every city, right?
Yeah. So I'll share that as well. So I think what we haven't done out of this 120 crores is put a lot of money into marketing, right? Typically for startups, if you raise 120 crores, like you'll say at least 30-40 crores goes into marketing, right? I think as a company, we would have probably not even spent like 3 crores, 4 crores into marketing in the last 3 years all put together, right? So I think what we have tried to grow by and use our funding or capital on is actually creating a great product that consumers pick, right? And give great service. So we are a 70% net promoter score business. That has led to a very high word of mouth. Because consumers then basically tell their friends and family, boss, if you're going solar, go with SolarSquare. And that was a very conscious design choice. I think we have chosen always to have great customer experience over growth.
Sure.
Right? And and our investors have been aligned to that, right? In fact, one of the questions that Nitin asked us and Rain Matter team asked us a lot before funding was actually more on the ethics of the business. Was actually on, okay, how do we intend to make solar expensive? Do we intend to spend a lot of money in marketing? How will we treat our installation partners? What is the design choices that we as founders will make? Will they be system positive or not? And I think even Rain Matter cared a lot about that. So, but even those investors who are not impact investors, for even them, I think they've all been very supportive of our design choices to be this system positive company, to choose customer experience over growth. And some of those things.
So that's quite important. So there is not just the impact investors who funded you.
Yeah.
Normal VC has also funded you.
Yes.
Right.
In fact, we have more regular VCs than impact investors on our, in like a overall share of cap table. Our largest shareholder is Elevation Capital, which is a regular venture fund, capitalist venture fund. Then we have Lower Carbon, which is a climate tech, which is the world's largest climate tech fund. It's a $2 billion fund. We have Good Capital, which is again a venture fund. They are sector agnostic. Then we have Rain Matter, which is a climate tech fund, and a bunch of others.
And Rain Matter usually doesn't do follow-on funding, but they have given you follow-on as well.
Yeah.
How are you going to ensure that you're around for a long time?
Yeah. I think that's so important, Hansi, right? I think for any business to have any impact, even if you're a climate tech business and you're very driven by that, even if you're an NGO, I think economic viability matters a lot. So,
especially because your product is 25 years sort of lifetime, right?
Absolutely. And we have that muscle, right? Like we've been around for 9 years. 5 out of that we were a profitable bootstrap business, right? So we know what it takes to build, to run, to manage cash flows, to manage profitability, to manage your P&L. And the idea is to get back there. I think right now, it is our phase to invest in the product, invest in technology, invest in processes that then allow us to scale, right? And I think not all funding is to support viability, right? Some funding is just to support speed, right? And I think right now our funding is to support building those foundations, building that speed. We make money on every consumer, every order that every home that we install solar, every housing society that we install solar, right? So we are using this capital mostly to fund talent and technology and some of those sort of longer term investments. And we do intend to get profitable again in the next few years itself. Yeah.
How do you grow even faster? I mean, are your installation partners, for example, are they all on salary, or can you franchise this as well?
Yeah. So our installation partners are third-party contractors, but they are trained by us, they are managed by us, and we are fully responsible for the end consumer. So the consumer's order journey, he only interacts with SolarSquare. The actual, the workmen who come to your home, they will be from a third-party contractor. It's a little bit like Urban Company, right? Like the company is ensuring your experience and quality, but the actual, work may be done by a third-party partner. How do we make it, we can be in Pune, but how do I go into a Solapur? How do I go into a Kolhapur, right? Like I do need presence across 500 cities of India. I'm just in 15 cities right now. So definitely going via partners is on the cards, and it is going to be something that we explore over the next few years. Honestly speaking, right now, the 15 cities that we are in, like the demand is growing so fast that it's just, it's difficult to keep pace,
And talk about the growth of the industry itself. How many players are there? I mean, you talked about being number one. Another big name, I think, in the market is Tata. I mean, so you're competing against Tata. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how many players are there today, and how many do you see entering?
Yeah. So Hansi, I think there are close to 3,000, 4,000 rooftop solar companies, lots of mom and pop shops. It's mostly local players. So somebody doing installations in Pune will only be in Pune. Somebody doing Kanpur will only be in Kanpur. So it's mostly a lot of local mom and pop shops. I think as a professional full stack brand, so we are one of the biggest design choices is we don't have any middlemen right now. We are a full stack brand, right? So we ensure the quality, we ensure the after sales. Our neck is on the line, right? So we are actually doing the last mile for this consumer. For example, a Tata or a Vari or some of these other large OEMs, right? Luminous, Exide, Havells, Tata, Vari. There are several OEMs who are manufacturing either panels or batteries or switchgear or cables or something or the other. They have their distribution network. This distribution network is selling the product, but it's also doing the installation for the consumer, right? So it's a little bit, that's a more channel-led or one-arm distance sort of a, brand building play. What we are doing is a more direct-to-consumer brand building play, right? So yes, it is incredible to be, working alongside a Tata. So much respect for the brand. And, it evokes this respect from competitors. It, of course, evokes a lot of respect from consumers as well. And I think the full stack solution, the product offering, I do believe we've innovated a lot for the consumer's pain point. Hence, without spending much on marketing, we've become number one. All the cities that we operate in, I think we have anywhere between 10 to 30, 35% market share. You take a Pune, you take a Bangalore, you take a Hyderabad, we are more than 25% market share everywhere.
Right. Speaking of climate change, again, one of the interviews, I think it was your husband, I think, who said his mother-in-law, your mother, must have pampered him because zero bill aaya. My concern is this. One of the biggest, I know thermal coal is sort of one culprit, but the other culprit is cooling or air conditioning. So the issue that I see, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I have free electricity, then I'm likely to leave the AC on without guilt.
Yep.
But that's causing other kinds of emissions. So how do you account for that?
That's a great question, Hansi, right? I think as consumers, let's first start with this, right? We are, for most even developed countries, right, there are researches that say that very, very few consumers will actually pay even a penny more for something that's climate friendly. Till it is cheap, I am not willing to pay a premium for something because I want to do good for the climate, right? Unfortunately, climate change, or I think we should officially now call it climate chaos. And I think climate change is one such thing that it's some glaciers melting somewhere. Till it's on my doorstep, I don't care about it, right? So that's for most consumers.
The number of cyclones didn't give you a hint?
It, unfortunately, not to the mass of the consumers, right? So for most consumers, unfortunately, there are very few who will say, I have to go solar today because I want to reduce my carbon footprint. How many people around us are actively looking to reduce their carbon footprint? Very few. How many people are looking, but a lot of people are looking to go solar because it's also good economically, right? And I'm not being idealistic here, right? Economics is the biggest change agent, right? When economics is good, change happens faster than ever. So solar is one such technology, EVs are one such technology where it is also good economically, and hence those are going to be large, commercially, large scale adopted, products or solutions by families, right? So for most families, they don't understand that, or they don't actively think about reducing their carbon footprint, but they feel very happy after going solar that, by the way, I'm also doing something good for the planet. I've also reduced my carbon emissions. So a typical home that buys a 5 kilowatt solar, it's actually equivalent to planting 75 trees. The carbon emission reduction is equivalent to planting 75 trees. 1 kilowatt solar will offset 1 metric ton of CO2. Per year, not offset, actually reduce. And 1 metric ton is like 1000 kilograms of carbon dioxide, right? So people feel great about that. We educate people about that by the way, this month you've offset so much carbon dioxide. By the way, your carbon dioxide reduction is equivalent to planting so many trees. So people love that, right? The biggest driver of consumption, household consumption growth is going to be cooling. India has extremely low air conditioner penetration and we are experiencing heat waves. We are impacted by rising temperatures, right? So if my kid is studying, if I have an old ailing parent at home, I will need cooling solutions in my family, right? And I do believe that at SolarSquare, we want to expand our product offering into more sustainable solutions, right? That actually help this family live sustainably on other aspects of there are heat pumps actually. There are heat pump solutions that are actually going out in like US and Germany and all. Like we're seeing a lot of heat pumps.
So do you?
It is a better solution
I was
than
gonna
air
say,
conditioner.
So do you envisage maybe offering that to consumers as an alternative?
See, there are several energy efficiency solutions on cooling, on, in fact, one of the very interesting things, Hansi, one of the very interesting consumer insights, we had a few consumer in their testimonials actually say, कि solar लगाने के बाद हमारा gas bill नहीं आ रहा. And I was like, what? Because they moved to induction cooktop. And do you know that the AQI, like if you have a air purifier in your room, you'll actually see when you're cooking, the AQI really increases.
Yes.
So actually using LPG gas for cooking is also a big sort of climate air quality, it deteriorates. It's a big climate change issue. It's not great for the lungs. It's not great for us. So actually even induction cooktop, for example, is a much more climate friendly solution if your electricity is through solar, right? So we're also seeing people, those overall, like they say, right, overall electrification is the answer. We have to burn lesser fuels. We have to electrify everything and use clean power.
Having the AC on all the time without opening the window is also not good. So I think a lot of consumer education that still needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lastly, I asked Shreya about the climate impact and what she is hopeful about. What are you hopeful for in terms of climate?
Oh, that's a deep question.
You have a little daughter, right?
Yeah. So I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I think climate change hits you harder, when you know what are you leaving behind for your kids, for your future generations. I hope that we act as fast as we need to. Some experts are starting to say it's not climate change, it should be relabeled as climate chaos, right? So that it hits you harder. I think climate change is one thing that it's nobody's problem, right? And because of that, it's everybody's problem. Everybody thinks that the government will act or World Bank will do something or somebody somewhere will fix this issue. I hope that we all start taking it personally. I hope we all start even if for 30 seconds, if we stop what we are doing and we think about the world that we are creating, the reality that our kids will face, that even we will face, by the way. I think if we take that 30 seconds to let it hit home, to let some of the images of what you've seen in the world just hit home and feel that that's happening to you and your family and your kids, I think we'll all just act with so much more urgency. It's a little difficult when you imagine something so adverse. It's human tendency to go like an ostrich, put your head in the sand and not let it sink. And it'll require, the collective might of everybody. So I'm really hopeful that we will solve this.
Well, hopefully some budding entrepreneur sitting somewhere has watched this interview and is inspired by you and what your co-founders have achieved. So thank you very much for making the time, sharing your journey, sharing your story, and having the climate conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will see you next time. I loved Shreya's energy in this conversation. Didn't you? We need more entrepreneurs like her and her co-founders who are willing to build trust with customers on a long-term basis. In the next episode, we will discuss how to harness the power of solar even when you don't have a rooftop. So watch out for that episode. Thank you for having the Climate Conversations.